Hello, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to our program. Now on tonight's headlines.
Malacanang said the government will not require all Filipinos to be inoculated with a potential coronavirus vaccine once it arrives in the country.
The United States hopes to begin coronavirus vaccinations in early December. A top government health official said the latest positive news to emerge even as cases surge across the worst-hit nation and elsewhere around the world.
And 3 young Hong Kong dissidents, including Joshua Wong, were remanded into custody on Monday after pleading guilty to inciting a rally during last year's pro-democracy protests, deepening the crackdown against Beijing's critics.
And finally, the UN said greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the main driver of climate change, hit record highs last year and have continued climbing this year despite measures to halt the pandemic.
First, here in the Philippines, the government will not require all Filipinos to be inoculated with a potential COVID-19 vaccine once it arrives in the country, according to Malacanang. In a press briefing via Zoom, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said nobody will be forced into getting COVID-19 vaccine shots because the Department of Health said the country will only need 50 to 60% of the population to be vaccinated to achieve herd immunity. Take a look.
Sa ngayon po, sang-ayon po sa isang survey ng SWS, 66% naman po ng ating mga kababayan ay payag magpabakuna. Ang sabi naman po ng DOH, ang kinakailangan natin bakunahan ay 50% ng populasyon para magkaroon na tayo ng herd mentality. So kung talagang ayaw magpabakuna, hayaan na po muna natin sila.
Last Friday, Secretary Roque said the palace was pleased with the result of the survey because it shows that many people trust the government. However, he also said the palace is hoping that the rest of the country would change their mind and opt to get the vaccine against the coronavirus.
The United States hopes to begin coronavirus vaccinations in early December, a top government health official said, the latest positive news to emerge even as cases surge across the worst-hit nation and elsewhere around the world. Our plan is to be able to ship vaccines to the immunization sites within 24 hours of approval by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Monsef Slawi, head of the U.S. government virus vaccine effort, told CNN, pointing to possible dates of December 11 or 12. 2 leading vaccine candidates, one by Pfizer and German partner BioNTech and another by U.S. firm Moderna, have shown to be 95% effective in trials, and Pfizer has already applied for emergency use approval from U.S. authorities. But top U.S. infectious disease official Anthony Fauci, who said maybe 20 million people will be able to get vaccinated by the middle of or the end of October or December, warned the situation could get worse before getting people better if people fail to take precautions in the coming holiday season. In the U.S., healthcare workers who have been hard hit by COVID-19 would be among the first to receive the vaccine. Almost 1,400 frontline health workers in the U.S. have apparently died of COVID-19, according to a joint investigation by British newspaper The Guardian and Kaiser Health News. 1/3 of the dead healthcare workers were nurses, according to the study.
Meanwhile, British drugs group AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford said their jointly developed vaccine against the coronavirus has shown an average efficacy of 70% in trials. Now, the results range between 62 and 90% efficacy depending on the vaccine dosage. The 70% average is lower compared with the efficacy of coronavirus vaccines trialed by rivals Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna, which have come in above 90%. AstraZeneca said it would immediately prepare regulatory submission of the data to authorities around the world that have a framework in place for conditional or early approval. It added that it would seek emergency use listing from the World Health Organization to accelerate vaccine availability in low-income countries. AstraZeneca said it is looking at a capacity of up to 3 billion doses of the vaccine in 2021, pending regulatory approval. It also said the vaccine can be stored, transported, and handled at normal refrigerated conditions of between 2 and 8 degrees Celsius for at least 6 months.
All along the edges of a long boulevard in Montreal stretches an unprecedented sight in the city. Hundreds of tents have sprung up in a brand new homeless city since the end of summer, with many of the people thrown out of their homes because of the pandemic. Watch this.
Là, on est visible. C'est là qu'est le problème pour le niveau politique, c'est qu'on est visible. Et les gens aiment bien ça, que l'itinérance, la misère, ça soit invisible.
Avant la pandémie, on avait fait un dénombrement qui nous démontrait qu'il y avait 3000 personnes par nuit qui étaient sans abri, dans des refuges, ou dans des hôpitaux, ou en prison, ou dans des services, ou qui dormaient dans les parcs. Avec la pandémie, on considère que le nombre de personnes qui dormaient dehors, donc on est passé peut-être de 700 à plus de 1000 personnes. Donc il y a vraiment une augmentation des personnes sans abri et qui nous demandent de construire de nouveaux refuges.
Faced with an emergency, the authorities in the province of Quebec and the city of Montreal have launched a number of initiatives, including a hotel that starting this month is due to lodge 380 homeless people every night until the end of March. Mr. Loriot, the homeless commissioner, added that many homeless people might be driven away from the encampment when the temperatures drop.
And Canada's biggest city entered lockdown on Monday in the latest bid to curb the coronavirus infections, with case numbers surging across North America, even as U.S. officials said vaccinations could be available within weeks. Toronto banned private indoor gatherings and capped the size of weddings and funerals for 4 weeks from midnight, with officials warning that hospitals risked being overwhelmed without quick action. Let's listen in.
We've saved lives, but this virus, it spreads like wildfire. And in certain parts of the province, it's spreading at an alarming rate in the community. Last week, our modeling showed that if nothing was done, we could face 6,000 new daily cases in the coming weeks, overwhelming our ICUs shortly after that. So after extensive consultation with the Chief Medical Officer of Health and the Public Health Measures Table, effective Monday, November 23rd at 12:01 a.m., Toronto and Peel will be moved into lockdown. My friends, I know these past few months have been extremely difficult. COVID fatigue is setting in on all of us, but I've seen the strength of our people, and it's up to each and every one of us to determine our future.
We've seen hospitalizations increase, and tragically, more people have died from this virus. Today, we've also seen very grim projections from the Government of Canada that show without further interventions like this one announced today, COVID-19 could spread like wildfire right across our country. We have to stop this virus now to save lives, protect our most vulnerable, and ultimately to protect our economy. That's why I support the provincial measures announced today by Premier Ford. We can't have a healthy economy and build back better if people are sick.
Now, Mayor Tory's comments came just 30 minutes after a news conference in which Premier Doug Ford announced the fresh lockdown for Toronto and Peel region to contain runaway spread of the virus. The Premier also urged people to go shopping just once a week for essentials and to do other outdoor activities alone as much as possible for the time being. Officials said the shutdown will last a minimum of 28 days, and the province says it will fine people $750 for violating public health rules. Officials had forecast more than 400,000 new infections a week across Canada by the end of the year without new restrictions, more than the total number of cases recorded nationwide since the start of the pandemic.
Staff of Shanghai's biggest international airport are facing mass testing after a small outbreak of COVID-19 in the city was linked to several cargo handlers, with plans underway to vaccinate high-risk workers. Shanghai has reported 6 local infections linked to the airport this month, with most of the cases in the past few days. More than 17,700 people had been swabbed by Monday morning in the drive to test airport cargo staff, the official Xinhua news agency reported, and results had come back negative on over 11,500 so far. Frontline cargo workers will be given regular tests in the future, and those in high-risk jobs will also be given vaccines for COVID-19, citing Shanghai Airport Authority Vice President Zhu Zhenlong, who said the process would be voluntary. China has been giving experimental COVID-19 vaccines to people, including state employees, international students, and essential workers heading abroad since July.
India's health minister said a locally developed COVID-19 vaccine candidate could complete its final trials in a month or two. The state-run Indian Council of Medical Research, or ICMR, and privately held Bharat Biotech this month started third-stage trials of the Covaxin. It's the most advanced Indian experimental vaccine. Harsh Vardhan told a web conference on the pandemic that the government's plan was to immunize 200 million to 250 million Indians by July. Indian officials have said they expect to rely on Covaxin and 4 other locally tested candidates to control COVID-19, as they don't expect early access to sufficient quantities of those developed by Pfizer and Moderna. India has seen a drop in daily cases over the past month, but it's still registering about 45,000 new infections on average every day. New Delhi, facing the dual scourge of winter pollution and coronavirus, has seen infections soar past 500,000, with a record rise in daily cases.
In the latest episode of PCOO's Laging Handa documentary, which features alternative treatments to COVID-19, Dr. Fabian Dairit of the Ateneo de Manila University Chemistry Department uses virgin coconut oil as a functional food that is currently being studied due to its antiviral properties that can help fight COVID-19. The Department of Science and Technology, through the Philippine Council for Health Research and Development, earlier said coconut or VCO compounds such as MCT or medium-chain triglycerides oil not only reduces the coronavirus count by up to 90%, but it also improved cell survival of patients with COVID-19. These findings came after 6 months of initial trials.
Ang activity na tinutukoy ni Dr. Dairit ay ang kakayahan ng virgin coconut oil na labanan ang COVID-19 virus.
Ang functional food is like a food supplement. Yeah, similar to a food supplement. You can take it. It has properties of food, but it has functions more than what you get from a regular food. So VCO is both a source of energy, and in this case, it also has antiviral properties. So we're not treating VCO as a drug, we're treating it as a food. So in fact, if VCO works, then you can take it like a food supplement and still have the antiviral properties. VCO had the characteristics of being antiviral. And then when I studied it further, hindi lang pala siya antiviral. Immunomodulatory rin siya kasi it will raise the yung immune bodies, and then anti-inflammatory siya. Parang in one functional food, you have all 3 properties. Pero kung punta ka sa pharma, iba ang antiviral drug, iba ang vaccine, iba ang anti-inflammatory kung anong gamot.
Yes.
To prove it. At sa anti-inflammatory, kahit na C1, kahit na mahina, okay pa rin kasi where else can you get such an affordable thing?
Yes.
That even though it's not as, well, I don't think it's as strong as a drug. Kasi hindi naman sa drug. What's very nice about this is that the activity of the compound itself is not strong, but it's strong enough to affect the virus.
Okay.
Without destroying the cells, the body.
Okay.
I think that that's a good property of a functional food. Wala siyang side effect. So the suggestion is 1 tablespoon after or with every meal.
Like other European countries, France has just detected COVID-19 in one of its 4 mink breeding centers and has culled 1,000 of the mammals prized for their sleek fur. Now, mink can not only contract the disease, but also infect humans. It is the only species known to be able to infect other species, such as humans and cats. So far, the French government said all French farmers in contact with minks have tested negative to the coronavirus. Preventive measures remain in place in all the farms. Coronavirus cases in mink have since also been reported elsewhere in Europe, notably in Sweden, Greece, and the Netherlands. The Danish Health Ministry said on Thursday that the mutated strain had most likely become extinct after it detected no new cases after the 15th of September.
Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez announces the government's ambitious plans to vaccinate a very substantial part of Spain's population of 47 million by mid-2021. He says that the campaign will start in January and involve 13,000 vaccination points across the country. The country has recorded fewer than 400 COVID-19 cases per 100,000 inhabitants over the last 14 days, compared to nearly 530 cases at the start of the month. Meanwhile, in another development, Madrid's regional government will close its borders with other regions between December 4th to 15th in an effort to stop transmission of the virus over the long bank holiday weekend, which begins on Friday and lasts until Tuesday. Travel into and out of the region will only be permitted on justified or emergency grounds.
In other news now, 3 young Hong Kong dissidents, including Joshua Wong, were remanded into custody on Monday after pleading guilty to inciting a rally during last year's pro-democracy protests, deepening the crackdown against Beijing's critics. Take a look.
Perhaps the authorities wish me to stay in prison, but I'm persuaded neither prison bars, nor election bans, nor any other arbitrary power will stop us from activism. What we are doing now is to explain the value of freedom to the world through our compassion to whom we love, so much that we are willing to sacrifice the freedom of our own.
Now, Hong Kong was convulsed by 7 straight months of huge and often violent democracy rallies last year, in which millions took to the streets. Beijing has refused demands for free elections, and authorities have pursued democracy supporters with criminal cases and a sweeping new national security law. Wong, 24, was prosecuted alongside fellow activists Ivan Lam and Agnes Chow over a protest which took place last summer outside the city police headquarters.
In other news, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden plans to nominate a veteran diplomat, Anthony Blinken, as his Secretary of State, a decision likely to signal a return to multilateralism after Donald Trump's shunning of traditional allies. The 58-year-old Blinken, a former Deputy Secretary of State under Barack Obama, is also a longtime aide to Biden. Bloomberg and the New York Times reported the plan to nominate him. Biden is expected to announce the decision on Tuesday. Blinken, if confirmed by the U.S. state, would replace Mike Pompeo, whose priorities have included a more confrontational approach to China and containing Iran. Blinken was closely involved in the Obama administration's sealing of a landmark 2015 nuclear accord with Iran that President Trump exited.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held secret talks in Saudi Arabia Sunday with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, according to media, in the first reported trip by an Israeli premier to the kingdom. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who was in Israel last week, was also at the reported talks. A diplomatic correspondent at Israeli public broadcaster Kan said on Monday. The broadcaster cited unnamed Israeli officials as saying that Netanyahu and the head of the Mossad spy agency, Yossi Cohen, flew yesterday to Saudi Arabia and met Pompeo and MBs in the city of Neom, referring to the often used initials of Prince Mohammed. The reported meeting comes weeks after Israel agreed historic U.S. brokered deals to normalize ties with the two Saudi allies in the Gulf, the UAE and Bahrain, pacts known as the Abraham Accords. U.S. and Israeli officials have repeatedly indicated that more Arab states were set to forge ties with Israel. Sudan has agreed to do so in principle. And we'll take a short break. Eagle News will be right back.
This portion is brought to you by RJK Services Manpower Agency Corporation.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman says the G20 leaders agreed to spare no effort in creating the conditions for a more affordable access to a COVID-19 vaccine and ensure its fair distribution worldwide. Watch this.
Together, we have addressed this challenge with seriousness necessitated by the responsibility to preserve human life. In the G20, we agreed to spare no efforts in creating the conditions for affordable and equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostic tools.
In Sunday's communique, the G20 countries said they supported a global project for vaccines, tests, and therapeutics called Access to COVID-19 Tools, Accelerator, and its COVAX facility to distribute vaccines. While richer nations plan their vaccination programs, with the U.S. expecting to launch in early December, experts warn that developing countries face hurdles that could deny billions the first proven protection against the virus. Calls are mounting for the G20 to help plug a $4.5 billion funding gap in the so-called ACT Accelerator, a mechanism led by the World Health Organization that aims to ensure access to tests, treatments, and vaccines for all.
And staying at the G20 virtual summit, the German chancellor said she was concerned that no major vaccine agreements had yet been struck for poorer nations, even as rich countries have already brought up huge numbers of doses from pharmaceutical firms. Take a look.
Glücklicherweise kann man sagen, gibt es jetzt Hoffnung auf Impfstoffe, und insofern stellt sich diese Frage auch sehr konkret, dass wir nicht nur in Europa uns Impfstoffe sichern, so wie es die Europäische Kommission tut, sondern dass dies auch insgesamt für die Länder der Welt wichtig ist und richtig, dass es
Her comments came as G20 nations pledged to address the immediate financing needs to support the production and fair distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, treatments, and tests.
U.S. President Donald Trump defended his decision to pull out of the Paris Climate, calling it unfair and one-sided, even as President-elect Joe Biden has pledged to rejoin the landmark agreement. The United States formally left the 2015 Paris Accord earlier this month, becoming the first country to ever withdraw from an international climate change pact. Watch this.
I withdrew the United States from the unfair and one-sided Paris Climate Accord, a very unfair act for the United States. The Paris Accord was not designed to save the environment. It was designed to kill the American economy. I refuse to surrender millions of American jobs and send trillions of American dollars to the world's worst polluters and environmental offenders. And that's what would have happened.
Trump has aggressively championed the fossil fuel industry, questioned the science of climate change, and weakened other environmental protections. Trump, who has refused to concede the bitter U.S. election, had given a one-year notice to leave the Paris Accord on November 4, 2019. Biden has vowed that the U.S. would rejoin the Paris Climate Accord on his first day in the White House in January, a move welcomed by the European leaders. The U.S. president-elect has proposed a $1.7 trillion plan to take the United States, the world's second biggest carbon emitter, to net zero by 2050.
And to the United Kingdom now, where the Finance Minister Rishi Sunak warned that the British economy was under enormous strain because of the pandemic ahead of a government spending review next week. However, he ruled out a return to austerity measures. Here's Caroline Kennedy for the report.
Britain's Finance Minister Rishi Sunak on Sunday warned that the British economy was under an enormous strain because of the coronavirus ahead of the government spending review next week. But he ruled out the return of austerity measures. Economic forecasts to be released alongside his Wednesday spending review would show that the enormous strain and stress of the economy is experiencing, Sunak told Sky News. The findings of the independent forecast of the Officer for Budget Responsibility, as well as the 750,000 job losses from the coronavirus, would have been taken in the round as we consider the best way to fight the virus, he said. Despite the profound impact of the coronavirus on Sunak's spending review, he has rejected a possible return to austerity measures on the economy. The government spending would continue to increase on the last year's day-to-day public spending, he said. There is absolutely no way in which anyone can say that's austerity. However, he has refused to rule out a widely expected public sector pay freeze. It was fair to think about what is happening with the wages and the jobs. With hours across the economy, we think about what the right thing to do is in the public sector, he said. Britain has suffered more than any other country in Europe from the coronavirus, according to the 54,000 deaths and 1.4 million cases. In November, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government imposed a 4-week lockdown to stop the spread of the disease. That this is due to particularly lifted on the 2nd of December, giving relief to some businesses. Sunak said that the government was looking to ways to see how families could spend time with each other over the Christmas period, but has refused a preempt and announcement on the UK's winter virus strategy that by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson due on Monday. The government has said that the England-wide lockdown will be replaced by a tier system that had previously operated across the country. On Saturday, ahead of the spending review, Sunak's department unveiled a 3 $3 billion, $3.9 billion, and $3.4 billion to be supported by the National Health Service, NHS, in tackling the impact of coronavirus. As part of the package, £1 billion will be sent across the addressing backlogs in the health service, paying up to 1 million extra checks, scans, and additional operations for those who have had treatment delayed since the start of the pandemic. I am Caroline Kennedy, reporting from Northeast England, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you so much, Caroline Kennedy. Eagle News International will be back for more. Don't go away.
This portion is brought to you by Canreef Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered.
Hello there. Imagine Dami got the virus, and she infected 2 more.
The Bundle Island in Pakistan, where it's said to be a home of a few camels, is now at risk. Prime Minister Imran Khan is determined to turn it into an enormous real estate project to ease pressure on the expanding megacity home to 20 million people. Watch this.
It's the mangroves that protect us from these storms and cyclones. And the ecosystem here is essential for the livelihood of the fishermen who come here. So this is why we really need to protect it. It's only if nature thrives here that it's good for the entire city of Karachi.
The issue is not just with regards to the Bundle Island. The issue is with regards to all of these islands, because if you start a process of developing these islands, converting them into a commercial estate, then the mangroves will recede, the mangroves will go away.
The $50 billion housing development has pitted regional leaders against the central government, with local activists and lawmakers accusing the Prime Minister of reneging on pro-environment promises. Coastal mangroves act as a natural barrier, soaking up wave energy and limiting the extent of flooding. The city is already prone to inundation and suffered catastrophic flooding during this year's record monsoon, when filthy chest-deep water filled the streets. Bundle Island floods during particularly high tides, so any construction would also require environmentally damaging reclamation work that could have knock-on effects for Karachi. But Khan's administration says the project would create thousands of local jobs and bring much-needed relief to chaotically expanding Karachi, not to mention new tax revenue for Pakistan's cash-strapped coffers. A draft law immediately challenged by the provincial government of Sindh, where Karachi is the capital city, would turn Bundle and neighboring Budo Island into federal territories.
In Massachusetts, hundreds of endangered sea turtles wash ashore hypothermic from the cold ocean temperatures. This happens each fall at Cape Cod Bay, leading to the largest sea turtle stranding event in the world. Take a look.
Yeah, right now, the way it's unfolding, we had on the first stranding event, instead of getting 1 or 2 turtles, we got 16. And then this two or 3 days ago, we had another wind event, a series of wind events, and we have 70 turtles on one tide. And that's really unprecedented in an average year, or even somewhat exceptional. You couldn't write a more horrifying script for everything, really. I mean, this is what, you know, in a good year, we could deal with it, and you could bring in more people, and now you can't. So now we have to deal with it. Each one of us in our own way has to find the time to recover from being out there, you know, all of the shifts and all of the walking, all of the lifting, and then get ready for the next tide. And make sure we have the infrastructure and that we're able to move turtles around and get that all done.
Once you save one, it's, you know, you're just hooked. I mean, I find that my fellow volunteers, they'll do just about anything. You know, like, okay, it's 5 degrees out with a 30-mile-an-hour wind. Can you go out at 3 a.m.? You know, and they're like, yeah. So it's for the turtles, you know.
The organization Turtles Fly 2 and volunteers loaded up a record-breaking 74 sea turtles, most of which are Kemp's Ridley, known as the smallest and most endangered species in the world. They are to be flown on a single private aircraft to rehabilitation centers along the eastern seaboard before being released into the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico.
Greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the main driver of climate change, hit record highs last year and have continued climbing this year despite measures to halt the pandemic, the UN said on Monday. The World Meteorological Organization said lockdowns, border closures, flight groundings, and other measures to rein in the coronavirus crisis had indeed cut emissions of many pollutants and greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. But it warned the industrial slowdown due to the pandemic had not curbed record concentrations of the greenhouse gases that are trapping heat in the atmosphere, raising temperatures, causing sea levels to rise, and driving more extreme weather. The lockdown-related fall in emissions is just a tiny blip on the long-term graph. WMO Chief Pateri Taales said in a statement. He said we need a sustained flattening of the curve. The WMO's main annual greenhouse gas bulletin said preliminary estimates indicated that during the most intense period of the shutdowns, daily CO2 emissions may have been reduced by as much as 17% globally. It said the annual impact was expected to be a drop of between 4.2 and 7.5%. But this will not cause concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere to go down, warning the impact on concentrations was no bigger than the normal year-to-year fluctuations. CO2 is by far the most important long-lived greenhouse gas in the atmosphere related to human activities and is responsible for roughly 2/3 of the Earth's warming.
And here's Eliza Gonzalez Manglikmot, and she takes us to her favorite and friendly neighborhood trail in Maryland. Eliza?
For animals. Welcome to my favorite part of our city, the Seneca Green Whale Trail in Gaithersburg, Maryland. This neighborhood trail is a 2.5-mile moderate level hike path nestled in the heart of this suburban city. Every time a walk opportunity presents itself, I grab it and put on my hiking boots. A 30-minute to an hour of walking in this serene refuge resets and recharges the body and the mind for everyday tasks that await me. And when I'm here, some walk friends who don't really require any form of verbal conversation greet me every few meters. This is a box turtle. I have named him Raphael. You see his kind on the trail most of the time. This is Anne, and I make sure to walk around her every time I'm here. You know, respect for her space, so she'd respect mine. This is Leggy. Oh, don't worry, she's very friendly as long as you don't poke or tease her. This is Paro. Isn't he beautiful? And these are the Brown brothers. They are mainstays here. So you see, spending a very small portion of your day to say hi to these neighborhood friends in your neighborhood trail is worth every second. Just always remember your trail etiquette or hiking guidelines. According to the American Hiking Society, here are some reminders when out there enjoying nature. Hike quietly. Take advantage of sounds and respect others by hiking quietly or speaking in a low voice if there's a need to talk. If you packed it in, pack it back out, even if they are biodegradable items. Non-native foods are not good for animals to eat. If you are hiking downhill, you yield to those hiking uphill. Do not feed the wildlife. You do not want to mess with their natural foraging habits. The only things you should take with you are photos and memories. Leave what you see there unless it's trash, and be a good citizen to toss it away when properly able. Walk through the mud or puddle. Avoid walking around it. This will help preserve the trail by staying on the trail. If hiking with the group, avoid taking up the whole path and allow others to pass. And because we are living in pandemic times, don't forget to wear your mask if crossing paths with other hikers and observe social distancing. So, make no excuse. The trail is waiting for you. In Gaithersburg, Maryland, Eliza Gonzalez, Manglikmot, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Eliza. Eagle News. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
It says the best defense is still containment.
We are in uncharted territory.
Lighter volume 450. FI on to 100%. Traffic back. Suctioning.
Everyone, Net25 Kids is inviting you to EBC Webinars 2020. a series of educational and informative webinars for teachers and parents, which will be live-streamed via Net25 Kids' YouTube page. We will be featuring several guest speakers with years of experience to share information that would be valuable and helpful for teachers and parents as they educate and manage their children in these interesting times. Hope you will join us! For updates, schedules, and more information, please follow the Net25 Kids Facebook page.
Malalayong lugar ang kanilang narating para maghanap buhay. Tulungan ang pamilyang iniwan sa sariling bayan. Yan ang ating mga overseas Filipino worker. Pero dahil sa di pangkaraniwang pangyayaring hatid ay krisis, may ilan sa kanilang nagpasyang umuwi. Pinagyaman ang sariling lupain, nagtayo ng negosyo na kasama sa puhunan ang sipag at tiyaga. Ang mga OFW, maraming sakripisyo, ninanais maging kapaki-pakinabang maging sa kanilang pagbabalik bansa. Sapagkat ang ating mga bagong bayani, Pilipino pa rin sa puso at damdamin.
Boston's Jason Tatum and Utah's Donovan Mitchell landed lucrative extensions to their NBA rookie deals. The Salt Lake City-based Deseret News was among the outlets reporting that All-Star guard Mitchell had agreed a 5-year contract extension worth a guaranteed $163 million with the Jazz. The deal has escalators that could bring Mitchell's 5-year contract or 5-year total to $195.6 million. The extra money would come if Mitchell earns all NBA honors in the 2020-2021 season, the last year of his rookie scale contract, in which he is due to be paid $5.2 million. It's an investment in the future for the Jazz. Mitchell, the 13th overall selection in the 2017 draft, was runner-up for Rookie of the Year honors in his first season and has been Utah's leading scorer since he entered the league. The 24-year-old finished the pandemic-disrupted 2019-2020 season, averaging 24 points, 4.4 rebounds, and 4.3 assists per game. Tatum, 22, also emerged as a star last season, setting career score or career highs in scoring with 23.4 points per game, rebounding at 7 per game, and assists at 3.0 per game. ESPN reported Tatum's extension will be worth $195 million over 5 years, with a player option in the 5th year.
To other news now, a 45.5 meter or 150-foot deep diving pool with artificial underwater caves and Mayan ruins, the world's deepest such structure, opened near Warsaw this weekend. Take a look.
Otwartego oceanu, nie ma tutaj pięknych rybek, nie ma raf koralowych i tak dalej, więc to na pewno nie jest zamiennik wód otwartych, ale na pewno jest to bardzo fajne narzędzie do przygotowania się, samoszkolenia, żeby w tych wodach otwartych potem móc bezpiecznie nurkować, no i też oczywiście dla zabawy, to takie przedszkole dla nurków.
The complex, named Deep Spot, even includes a small wreck for scuba and free divers to explore. It has 8,000 cubic meters of water, more than 20 times the amount in an ordinary 25-meter pool. Unlike regular swimming pools, Deep Spot can open despite coronavirus restrictions in Poland because it's a training center that offers courses. A hotel with rooms from which guests will be able to watch divers at a depth of 5 meters is also planned. The current holder of the world's deepest pool in the Guinness World Records is in Monte Grotto Terme in Italy and is 42 meters deep. The swimming pool is also going to be used by firefighters and the Army. Despite its immense size, Deep Spot is, however, set to lose its crown soon as a new 50-meter deep swimming pool called Abyss is set to open in the United Kingdom in 2021. Around a dozen customers came on the first day, including 8 seasoned divers who hope to pass an exam to become instructors. Some 5,000 cubic meters of concrete were used over the 2 years it took to build the pool, and it cost around 40 million zloty or 8.9 million euros.
China is preparing to launch an unmanned spacecraft on Tuesday to bring back lunar rocks, the first attempt by any nation to retrieve samples from the moon in 4 decades. Beijing is pouring billions into its military-run space program with hopes of having a crewed space station by 2020 and of eventually sending humans to the moon. The Chang'e 5 probe, named after the mythical Chinese moon goddess, aims to shovel up lunar rocks and soil to help scientists learn about the moon's origins, formation, and volcanic activity on its surface. The mission is set to take off from the Wenchang Space Center on the southern island province of Hainan, according to the official Xinhua news agency. The China National Space Administration said on its WeChat social media account that the launch was planned for between 4 to 5 a.m. on Tuesday, and that is at 2000 GMT or 21 o'clock GMT Monday.
And the trees lining the avenue of Champs-Élysées in Paris lit up their red garlands, kicking off the holiday season. Take a look. Now, 2020 has been a year like no other. It's been overshadowed by the COVID-19 pandemic, which made this year's ceremony a bit unique. Barely anyone was there to admire the show. Parisians and people around the world were, however, invited to follow the ceremony online. Along the Champs-Élysées, 90% of the shops were forced to close in order to curb the spread of the coronavirus.
Even Simbang Gabi here is not going to be the same anymore. People are not going to be going to church anymore at midnight. That changes everything.
Yes, everything's, a lot of changes, of course.
Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Please join us again tomorrow. I'm CJ Hero.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.